Tonight, I'm so excited because we have a post-show conversation called Reclaiming Our Bodies, Deconstructing and Disowning Female Beauty Standards. And we've got some really great special guests here. First off, we were joined by Sophia Sun and Dawn Kim. They are the podcasters of Bamboo and Glass, and it is a podcast dedicated to underrepresented perspectives that shape our learning and our unlearning. So thank you all for coming. And we are also joined by Elizabeth Scott. Elizabeth, your screen is very melodramatic orange right now. I mean, it's kind of moody. I actually kind of like it. So if you can't fix it, sepia is coming back. Elizabeth Scott is the co-founder of The Body Positive, which is a healing community that offers freedom from suffocating societal messages that keep people in a perpetual struggle with their bodies. So I'm super excited she's here because I need some of that knowledge. And that's who we have tonight for today's conversation. So in terms of format, what we're going to be doing is we're going to have a 30-minute conversation together. And then we're going to have it followed by 15 minutes of Q&A from the audience. So if you're an audience member and you get inspired to write a question, put it in the Q&A function in Zoom and upvote your favorite question, and we will try to get to as many as possible. So that's what we're going to do. Let's kick it off. Elizabeth, this is looking a lot better now that you've lightened up. I don't know if this is metaphorical because I'm totally into it. It looks great. Yeah, you're on mute. You're on mute. So y'all just watch the show. Sophia and Dawn, this is your second time watching it. What is going through your mind right now?
Yeah, so not only did I have the chance to watch the show last year, but I also attended your Q&A last year. And something that really stood out to me was you made this comment about in your first show, 140 pounds. That was 2 years ago. It was before you were pregnant. And then last year you did over 140 pounds. You had your full belly. You were very pregnant at that time. And then now in the present day, your son is about 1 year old. Yeah. And something that you mentioned that really stood out to me last year was you said that when you were looking down at your body, you realized like this is the body that was your gift for your mom, and it was letting you become a mom yourself. And that was so moving to me. And so I was just curious, like, you just watched the show again. What are some words that come to your mind when you think about your relationship with your child and then with your body as well?
Oh my God. The first word that comes to my mind is just like union. Like I think leading up to the show, I was like freaked out about becoming a mom. Like, how do I be a mom if my mom's not here? And am I going to be a good mom? What does it mean to be a good mom? There was just like so much anxiety that led up to that point. And out comes baby Art, and his name's Art, just the concept, not short for anything. He comes out and he's been like so much joy. He has been like healing a lot of pain that I have around like, how does my father feel about me? And the way I feel about Art, there's like no anger. I mean, he's not a teenager yet, but like I have like so much pure love for him, and his love is so healing to me, that I feel like union with him and also with my mom is like union with mom. Like I have these kind of like small signs that I look for when I know if my mom's around or not. And last night it happened. I have a special number combination that I tell her, like, when I see this number on the clock or something like that, I know that you're here. And I wake up last night in the middle of the night, Art is going through some teething stuff, and he's crying and crying. I'm like, oh my God, do you need milk? What is it? And then I go over to the fridge and then I see the number. And I just stare there, and it just kind of like melts into my body. Cause like, who knows if it's real? Who knows if I'm projecting and I see numbers all the time, and I have selective memory, whatever it is. All I know is like, I feel like she's here. I feel like she's on this journey with me as an artist and doing this work. I feel like I'm in union with Art. Like, I feel like it's like, we're all there. Yet at the same time, when I watch this show, I'm like, oh man, I'm still learning that lesson. Like, I'm still learning that lesson. Like I was watching 140 pounds earlier today, and I'm just sitting here going like, I should pay attention to what I said. because that was good because I'm struggling through it. So it's still like its own cycle of figuring it out. Like, I don't think I'm like totally feel at peace about things, you know? Yeah. Dawn, how was your experience watching the show?
Yeah, so this is actually my first time because Sophia was the one who told me about going to watch your show last year. And immediately I knew that I wanted to, at the next chance that I got to watch it, I wanted to go watch it. I did a little bit of the reflection based on the questions that you had posed. And I think obviously your relationship with your parents and your mom is very prominent throughout this piece. And that really got me thinking about my personal relationship with my mom as well, because I had always told her that I never wanted to get married and that I never wanted to have kids, but it's never something that she really asked me more about. And a conversation that we had just started to have was I asked her like, oh, do you want me to get married and do you want me to have kids? And she said, no, like, I don't really care. And that was really surprising to me because I had grown up with this narrative that, oh, like most mothers would want their kids to like, to give them grandchildren and whatnot. And I think I know that my mom growing up, she apparently had always wanted to be a mom. And so I thought that was really interesting that she had a different expectation for me, it sounds like, compared to what she had desired for herself. And when I think about beauty standards and just that societal pressure that is placed upon women, I also think about perfectionism. There's this great quote from Brene Brown in her book, Daring Greatly, where she talks about how men and women experience shame differently. And for women, it has a lot to do with perfectionism and needing to look perfect, needing to be perfect in all the roles that they occupy. And so I kind of want to ask her, like, is it anything to do with in-laws, with family, with like this need to be perfect that she is not necessarily encouraging me to get married and to have kids? Because that's another layer of pressure that I know that my mom has had to experience and has also had to experience halfway across the world. And like that presence was always very burdensome for her. And it's something that was always very difficult for us to talk about, something that usually is a pinnacle point of our conversations when it comes to my personal like dating romantic life as well. And so I think I want to tell her and continue that conversation that my main fear of being a mom is really what you said, Susan, about I don't want to fuck up another person's life. Like I don't want me having grown up with this pressure of needing to be perfect. I don't want to pass that on to someone else. And I kind of want to ask her too, like how she went about navigating that for herself, because I'm sure it was a journey that I'm an only child, so that was her first time parenting too. And so I want to ask her a little bit more about her journey and just what her perspective was as I grew up too. So that's a little bit about what was kind of going through my mind. I feel like my heart's a lot more open to having these more vulnerable conversations with my mom, where usually it would just be like a question and answer back and forth. So.
And Dawn, what I'm hearing here is like your relationship with her is changing. So it's not like mother-daughter anymore in a way you can almost, and I'm not saying it's a peer or equal relationship, but as adults, you're able to have different types of conversations.
Yeah, definitely. Like I've seen that change in the most recent years too, with my mom being more, like I'll go to her and be ranting to her about something. She'd be like, well, just do whatever you want. And I'm like, wait, where was that advice when I was growing up in elementary, middle, high school? Like it was always very black and white. And so I feel like my parents are recognizing too that I am an adult and that I have a good head on my shoulders, that I am able to make my decisions. And so it's really opening up new possibilities for the kinds of conversations we can have. So yeah.
Love it. Elizabeth, this is your first time watching any of my work. Y'all work on the body and think about the body, and you've been doing this for decades. What was your experience with the show?
It's heartbreaking to me, Susan. It's so heartbreaking. And to me, the piece about becoming perfectionistic and trying to reduce our body and get rid of parts of ourselves, it's so much about an enactment of trauma. And this idea that if we could just tummy tuck or just get a little change, then we could be safe. We'd arrive someplace. And I mean, to me, it's so much about the mother-daughter relationship because it's about the feminine. And to me, that rigid perfectionism and achievement and will, it's a kind of a twisted way of trying to be masculine in the world, instead of being able to be soft in our souls and in our bodies, and to let our bodies be the size and shape that our ancestors gave us.
Right.
That ancestors are our bodies. This is them.
Right. You know,
And so-
I'm Vietnamese, and I have really large calves. Like they're huge. Like I try to wear boots back when like tighter, longer boots were in style, and they were just like too small. And I'm like, how do I have such insane calves? And then I went to Vietnam and I see women with large calves, and you have to think about like, okay, why? And it's like, well, there's actually a lot of squatting and a lot of, you know, like bending over and using your legs when you're in the fields, in the rice fields.
Yes.
You know, and I was like,
Yes,
oh.
and even if you haven't met them, you can find them in your body. Even if you haven't met some of your ancestors, or for you, it's so heartbreaking to have missed all those years of your mother, because so much of our body relationship and our soul and how we live as women develops as we know them. And so I was really touched by you bringing her in to your experience, and that, like, actually finding her in your body to show up in your experience. It's a beautiful, like, spiritual feat.
Wow, I'm really resonating with what you're sharing, Elizabeth, because I'm also even thinking about being a child of immigrants, kind of being, we talked about being stuck between two cultures, but there's also almost being stuck between two different types of beauty standards as well. Like in Korea, there is a big plastic surgery culture there, where a lot of young women, when they're in high school, go through like this rite of passage of getting double eyelids. And that is very much influenced by Western beauty standards, but a particular procedure that a lot of Koreans end up getting. And I saw a lot of my fellow like Korean American peers like flying to Korea to get these procedures. And I felt very caught in between, because I was like, well, you don't really hear about anyone in America doing that. But then I go back to Korea to see family, and that's the first thing that they'll say to me is like, oh, are you gonna go get your double eyelids done? Like, because that's just a given. Like, that's not even an offensive thing of like, oh, you don't have double eyelids, like you look ugly. It's more of a, oh, everyone does it, so are you here to do this as well? Yeah.
But see, it's like so complicated, because in Korea it's tied to your resume, right? Your pictures, and at one time unemployment was so high that people really wanted to make sure that they looked the best as possible or could be as competitive as possible on their resumes. So it came from this economic need, and then now it's just like, it's just standard.
Yeah, like it started economically, but now it's a social thing where it's almost like everyone in your friend group goes and does it around the same time.
Right, but only when you go to Korea. So clearly it's tied with racism.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so the intersection of the dismissing the feminine, trying to get rid of and change our body, I'm so interested in how it intersects with the way racism is enacted here in the United States, and that you have to have these double lids, because then you can climb the social ladder and move up in caste and get the job that you want. It's so tangled with self-loathing.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, like, when I look at these people, when I look at people who put on filters on their social media posts, like, it looks good, you know, or like sometimes it kind of like looks kind of weird, but it's like overall it's like all like bright and lit, you know, and it's fresh. And I just sit there and I go like, well, I don't want to do that. But then at the same time, when people do that, they like look good, right? And they get more likes, which I think, Elizabeth, what you're talking about with the cast, like social media is its own form of cast, you know, of looking at the number of followers and engagement that you get. And so it's like so troublesome that you kind of know what will win, and you don't want to be a loser, but at the same time, it's like, then what are you going to do?
Right.
Yeah, I want to ask Sophia, because Sophia, you're currently working on Flipgrid, and I know that you've been implementing filters for this like social media app that is primarily used in the classroom. And so I'd love to hear what goes through your thoughts as you are, you know, helping decide what filters are appropriate for the classroom and for educational purposes, and also what would be entertaining for students to use as well.
Yeah, that is a very good question. So I do work on a education app where students are able to record a video of themselves and submit the video as part of a discussion. And so when we think about filters, we actually enable teachers to disable filters. So there's a bunch of different effects that we have, and we let you separately disable filters in case the teacher just really doesn't want students to use those. But also, students are so used to using them in other apps that when they open our app and when they found that we didn't have filters, they just felt so uncomfortable. And so it almost felt like we had to make it an option for students who really needed it to feel comfortable participating in a conversation. So yeah, it's very tricky. It's a conversation we had with our team a lot. And we've also thought a lot about making sure that the filters weren't whitening or lightening your skin, but we used a lot of different colors. Like we kind of framed them as like setting the mood for your video. So we had this like really like sepia mode, right? If you wanted to tell a story that was more like, oh, it's like a story about my family. And we have these like really colorful rainbow ones if you wanted to tell, kind of convey a more excited mood. We were very careful to not include filters that alter, that kind of suggest that you would look better if your skin tone was a certain way.
I think it's just really powerful to open up these conversations and have them, to just talk about the conversation that, Susan, you weren't able to have with your mom, which is why go have this surgery? And let's really dive down into what's the meaning of it. Why do we need that? Why do we have to have our eyelids done? What's the message?
Well, Elizabeth, I need your coaching on this then, because I do this work. I talk about bodies, and in the beginning of the show, you see my mom's stretch marks on her tummy. And it's like, now I have these stretch marks, and I'm not sure if they're going to fully fade. And it's like, it's a reminder, like, wow, like watching the show, I was like, wow, I was housing art. Like, look at him. Like, thank you, body, for that gift. And yet I look at the stretch marks and they kind of look almost the same as my mom's stretch marks. And I made my husband take photos of them. I want to put them next to each other. So it's like, I consciously know, like, she didn't have to lose her life over this. Like, she was so amazing, and I wish I could still have her back. But at the same time, like, I look at my stretch marks, and I'm not actively saying I love my body.
That's not, I don't think that's necessarily the goal. But why, but just to keep asking the questions, like, why do we need to remove the tracks of our children from our bodies? Why do we have to have a pre-mother body 20 minutes after giving birth to a child? Why not have the marks of our child stretching our bellies? Why can't that be our beauty?
You know what it is? I was writing a piece on this the other day, and I just remember one of the first memories I have of my mom is I fall down in the gravel parking lot of our nail salon, and my knees are bleeding. And I run in and I'm trying to get cleaned up, but I don't want her to see me. And then she yells at me and she's like, now you're ruined. Like, and if it scars, then no one's going to love you. So like I'm 6 and I'm like, okay. And it's like, when someone tells you don't pick a scab, and also scabs are scabs. And it was just like, there was something around like, like, don't scar, and for me, growing up Vietnamese, and I don't know how it is in the Korean culture, but it was just like, I was now tarnished, bad. And it's like, look, I feel like I identify as a feminist. Like, I'm not wearing makeup right now. Like, I'm not subscribing to that. But at the same time, like, it's like, it's like what you two talk about in your podcast about unlearning stuff, because that cuts deep. And even though I can have a rational conversation with you right now to be like, that doesn't matter, or like pain makes us stronger, or like it's on what the inside that counts. I'm very happy to marry a partner that like really doesn't care. But at the same time, I care on this subconscious level, and I know that because I'm like abusive, where I'm like, man, I still feel like a Teletubby. Like I got all this baby weight, and like only recently I've been able to run without peeing, right? Like my body is still on its healing journey. Like it's still like in recovery, like, and I really have to listen to my body more, but I'm still judging you know, and I know it comes from what my aunties and my parents said, but at the same time, like, I don't know how to unlearn it.
But you're doing it. See, it's so powerful. There you are, standing up with your full body in these images and telling the truth. So you are already changing that narrative and confronting it in your mind and speaking back to those aunties so that they can wake up a little bit more, at least the ones you've internalized. So
And-
over time, if you turn towards the fears and the, you know, these same stretch marks that mark your belly, and just turn towards to see what is the art of my experience that shows up in this belly, these tracks of my child coming through, and how can I turn towards these parts of myself that I hate and I've been taught to hate, but with kindness, with a fierce quality of self-love.
When you say tracks of my child, I'm like, of course I love the tracks of my child. You know, like it's undeniable.
Be a teenage body again, and instead of a mother.
You know, I always felt awkward in my body, always. Like so it's like, but I think there's something around our society's obsession of the virgin or the prepubescent, and it's very patriarchal and disgusting, and it's like that's its own weird thing, you know. But anyways, Elizabeth, I love how you just reframed it, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, of course I love my kid, of course. Oh, wait.
Yeah, and if you really step into the powerful feminine, yes, some people might be afraid you will devour them.
Well, okay, you're saying powerful feminine. Can you like give me the
like inhabiting your body without making adjustments, without trying to perfect yourself so you can meet some standard, but to just instead stand in front and talk for an hour and a half about the truth of your experience, like you just did. It's powerful, and it will cause some people to fear you and find you to be terrifying, and that's okay. That's what happens when you tell the truth. It's really, really powerful piece, because it's so honest, and that you found that your mother gave you permission to uncover her story is so beautiful. It's what's needed is to have that story spoken.
You know, Susan, I saw this quote a long time ago, but it said something like, when you think these, I guess, like mean thoughts about your body, reflect on who profits off of that thought. And every time I think about that quote, it like kind of stops me a bit, because I think about, okay, if I'm disliking the way that my legs are looking, if I'm disliking my tummy, who's profiting off of it? It's the Instagram models, and it's the companies that are selling me the tea to get skinny, right? And am I benefiting from this thought at all? Like, if thinking this is leading me to help these people profit off of my insecurity, like, let me just go try, let me catch these thoughts and try to reframe and think about something that actually benefits me and like uplifts me. So that's a quote that I saw years ago that pops into my mind every now and then.
That's good. That's good.
I switched cameras so I don't have to be a sepia weirdo.
New look. Same Elizabeth, new look. Yes, who profits? So true. I mean, the beauty industry is big. It's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
But so then, okay, what I don't get is that we don't feel good. We don't feel good. So like, why are there like so many women influencers doing all this stuff all the time around all the products and all the makeup and all this stuff? Like, I'm like, I don't know. It makes me feel really weird.
Well, I think Sophia is really powerful in talking about the perspective of power dynamics and profit. And I think if you can identify why it makes sense for you to make yourself smaller, who is it making bigger? That's one way of looking at it. And the opposite way would be to thinking, and what am I afraid of if I step into my power and speak my truth without a lot of I'm sorry's and apologies? You know, if I'm just okay with being flawed and imperfect, and female with flesh on my body. and then, but still taking up space. And what are you afraid of? Like, what am I afraid of in doing that? Because it's easier to be powerful if we can recognize our own fears in order to step up, take more space.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And when I think about like these female influencers, beauty influencers, I think I've definitely gotten a lot better at intentionally creating my digital environments where I'm not constantly consuming like these same posts over and over again on my feed. So that's like one thing. But then I think the other aspect is just how to deal with it when your loved ones, like the family members who, you know, are never going to leave your life, are bringing these into like straight into my face.
Yeah.
And it's not like an easy conversation to be like, well, let's talk about all the capitalistic aspects that are playing into why you are talking about this and why you are, you know, making these snide comments. Because I also think of this quote of, oh, the way that people respond to you is oftentimes a reflection of them or like their insecurities rather than what you truly are. And like, I can know that, but then if I'm confronted with that in real time from like a family member or a loved one, I don't always know how to respond aptly.
That's definitely the hardest group to deal with. And it's so, when listening to your story, Susan, you realize how powerful, like the chorus of comments about the body, how powerful that is. And I don't actually think we get free of those voices entirely. But you can notice how you repeat them inside of your head. And, you know, the ones in real life, you can say, ouch, that hurts my feelings when you attack my butt in those ways. But internally just noticing, so those arrows have been flung at me, but at least I don't need to pick them up and stab myself again. I do have a choice about that.
Man, that's good imagery. Like, what are we doing? What are we really doing?
Yeah, don't have to pick it up and use it again.
So I gotta tell you what happened. So I'm going on a walk yesterday. I'm talking to one of my aunts, and she says, she shows, we're FaceTiming. She goes, "Does my face look fat?" And I was sitting there going like, I had no words. Like, I had no words to be like, hey, auntie, let's like dismantle what you just said. You know, like I didn't say, because maybe she's expecting that, no, it's not. You look so, I guess, thin, you know, or like, who's gonna say yes, you know, but there was this like social expectation of what I was supposed to say. And I thought by me participating made me feel sick. But at the same time, but what I did to not participate was just like say nothing. And I'm kind of sitting here going like, oh my God, I verbalize for a living. And like, I couldn't like have this different conversation. I mean, part of it is we're speaking totally in Vietnamese, but I don't even know how to just start going there, which is like, hey, you know what my mom died of, and it makes me feel sad when you say that. So like, can we not talk about bodies?
Yeah.
You know, like or like my in-laws that are like, they'll say certain things about my son sometimes, and and it starts to move towards the body, and I'm like, I know all this stuff happened so young. I know it happened so young. And it's like, there's something around, I want to be explicit and just say stop, but there's this like bigger thing about disrespect and disagreement and breaking harmony that like, I'm second generation, and so I'm aware of all this stuff, but like to engage on that type of conversation level is like very hard. And I'm wondering, does anyone have any thoughts about that?
I think that there's a continuum between confronting people aggressively and saying, don't talk to me about that, and identifying a series of questions that you can inquire more deeply with them, and with a kind and curious attitude of, what does it mean when you ask me, does my face look too fat? What does it mean when you ask me that? What are you asking me, do you think, for real? You know my history. Body image really matters to me. What does it mean? What does it say about your feelings about our race if you talk about the roundness of my face or the roundness of your face? What do you think, what pain might you be expressing? I want to understand you more.
Man, Elizabeth, I just need you like holding my hand or like being one of those things on my shoulders, you know, but not the devil one, but the Elizabeth one, and just like calmly asking these questions because I'm like, okay. And then I'll like say that. Like,
This is what we teach at the Body Positive. At the Body Positive, we train peers, you know, high school and college kids, to talk to their peers about what are the questions? How do we ask these questions? What are the questions that will promote inquiry rather than just, like you're saying, I don't want to be challenging and insolent because I want to, you know, create harmony. But what about inquiry? What about curiosity? How do we explore? And like, how do we explore what's painful that we don't want to repeat? And I think women get particularly brave when people start going after their kids with the body image comments.
oh yeah.
So if you're you know, if you want to find the lioness in you, just let them start going after your son.
Yeah.
Oh, he's so fat, he's so chubby. It's like, oh my God, this is where the buck stops.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that you can find your bravery that way. But for people who you're close to and that you love, it can really just be identifying the questions. You know, and how is body hatred tangled with racism? How is perfectionism tangled with white supremacy? How are the changes that we have to make in our bodies about dismissing and diminishing women's roles? And do we want to keep doing that? Because we love each other, right? So why would we want to participate in diminishing each other's bodies?
I mean, Elizabeth, I hear you on all this, but like, how do you? Because I can be aggressive and intimidating, you know, and that's coming from an angry, insecure place, and you're not angry. Like, how did you get to this place of like zen on this? Like, I want to get there.
Yeah, well, yeah, and so that's the work, right? You know, it's really turning towards yourself with kindness over and over and over. You're doing it. You're so deep into this, Susan. I mean, that so much, to me, the heartbreaking part of your piece is just all the questions you wanted to ask your mother that you didn't get to. And so let that energy motivate you to ask those questions now. Not, you know, to on the stage, to the whole culture. Because you're doing it. You're asking those questions. Everybody is left sitting with all those questions. Questions are inescapable. So you don't have to make statements just to keep asking the questions. That is what your whole piece does. It puts that whole question out in the world in a way that's heartbreaking, so people will open their hearts and try to understand. If you talk about your pain, it's easier for them to hear you than if you're angry and challenging. Mm-hmm. And you do that. That's exactly what you do. So I think it's really powerful.
Yeah.
We've all been hurt, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had an experience where I went to a clinic with my mom, and she was the one who suggested I do mole removals. And I knew that it was relatively like low, like not that much downtime, but then I was actually flying back to the US the next day and going back to work. And then they ended up telling me like, oh, you need to wear bandages on your face for like 5 days. And I was like, well, I don't want to wear bandages on my face. Like, I don't want it that badly. Was only considering it because my mom wanted me to do it. And so I was like, oh, I'm not going to do it. And then basically there's this whole fuss like at the office where my mom was like, telling me like, you should do it. Why not? Why don't you want to do it? And then she made the comments that was like similar to what I think your family member said to you, Susan, of like, oh, well, you can live dirty for like the rest of your life. And then my question to my mom was like, does that make you feel good to say something like that to me? And then I think that's where she really, like, she just stopped talking. Like, she just shut up for like 5 minutes. And then when we were walking out with my dad, that's when my mom was like, oh, like, I'm sorry, like, I didn't mean to say it that way. Like that was like, I wasn't thinking about that. And so I feel like sometimes, because at least my parents are probably used to the power dynamic that we grew up with, they don't really expect me to question them in any way, to be like, does that make you feel good to say that to your like one and only daughter? But I'm glad that I was able to, give my parents like a little bit of pause to just kind of step back and think about, yeah, does that feel good to be critiquing other people in this way and to be judging people around, comparing myself to other people all the time? Because I don't want to be doing that. And I am very curious if my parents enjoy doing that on a daily basis. So that's just, I guess, an example of like that questioning that Elizabeth brought up, that I was like, yeah, I've seen it work really, really well with my parents, at least.
And that's a great example right in the cosmetic surgeon's office.
Yeah. Yeah.
Todd, I actually had a very similar experience. I also have these big moles and like, I guess, beauty marks on my face. Just so many. They're like stars all over my face. And growing up, my parents were always like, oh, Sophia, maybe you should remove them. I would go to the dentist, and the dentist, I'm like, you're supposed to be focusing on my teeth, okay, not on my beauty marks. I don't know why I feel like you are entitled to making so many comments. But once I asked my mom, I was like, what would it mean to you if I got these removed? And I then realized that she was actually, it wasn't like a beauty thing to her, it was like a health thing. She was actually really worried that these were like bad on my skin and that they would grow and they would become like more difficult to remove if I wanted to in the future. And so I think like asking that question to her really clarified some of the assumptions that I had. My assumption was like, my mom thinks I'll never be pretty if I have these. I'll never get a boyfriend if I have these. But actually, her concern was health. And I would have never known, we would have never realized that disconnect if I never asked her, like, what would it mean to you if I got these removed? So.
Yeah, I think your piece, Susan, it just introduces so many questions about the relationship of daughters and mothers, about how we can inhabit our bodies and embrace the ancestors that show up in our bodies, and how to turn towards the pain that's in the family and inquire and ask questions and explore in a loving way to uncover what's underneath so we can be more connected.
Yeah, I feel like I should call my aunt back now.
Yeah, Susan, one of the questions that really stood out to me was when you asked, if I have a girl, how do I make her love my body? That just, chills when I heard it. On the topic of unlearning these voices and influences we've grown up with, is there anyone who is, other than Elizabeth, Elizabeth, I would love for you to jump in as well. Like, who is starting these conversations that you want to surround yourself with? Who is creating the art and writing the books who are communicating ideas that you want to be in your mind to kind of replace, to help you in that journey of unlearning?
Yeah. So I was listening to a Brene Brown podcast, and her guest was Sonia Renee Taylor. The book The Body Is Not an Apology. And going back, Elizabeth, to what you're talking about white supremacy and body, it's just like, I am participating. I'm actually enabling all of this structure by me believing all of this stuff. And I am an active participant, and I need to recognize that and not do that. So up until this point, I was like, oh, this sucks. Like, this is like mean, and I don't feel enough. And like, I'm not that good, right? Like when I'm participating in a I'm not beautiful narrative. But then when I heard what she said, I was like, oh my God, that's still a form of participation. Like, even though I don't feel like I'm superior, like I'm upholding the structure by me believing it, by me saying those things to me. So I was like, well, I should just drop some intense knowledge on me. So that was just like super powerful when I heard that. How about you, Elizabeth?
Sonia Renee's deep. She's deep, and she really does show the links between body hatred and racism. And also there's so many conversations in the Black Lives Matter movement about the way that internalized racism and oppression leads to body dissatisfaction, leads to disruptions in embodiment, not being able to connect and take care of our bodies because of trauma. And I think when you talk about, wow, I'm enacting this, it's like, yeah, you don't want to enact the trauma that's happened to your family over and over by trying to cut and disappear parts of your body, but instead to stand in and grieve what losses you've had and heal and become self-regulated and take care of your body. So it's this whole continuum of racism and trauma and the way that it gets internalized, and other forms of oppression like sexism and sexual violence. It causes disruptions in how we relate to our bodies. And so there's whole fields around trauma work that is relevant here, because trauma work is about inhabiting our bodies in a more self-regulated, connected, loving way. So it's the opposite of oppression and disruptions in embodiment. So
Yeah.
Sonia Renee and lots of people speaking about, like Resmaa Menakem talking about Black bodies and racism, and there's a lot of great writing going on that I talk about in the trainings that I do with Black folks and other BIPOC folks, writing about how can we inhabit our bodies in more loving and connected ways.
Yeah. Like, in a way, if we were to transform our relationships with our bodies, that is resistance.
Exactly. You know, that we talk a lot about the way culture inscribes our bodies, inscribes us with body hatred or whatever, but just what you're talking about and what you're doing in this piece also works the other way. If we can inhabit our bodies with more freedom, we can also change culture. So the way we live in our body changes culture. Even if you can't have that conversation with your elders, you can inhabit your body in a way that's alive and connected and forgiving in front of them and teach them something.
Susan, I would love to, if we have time, I would love to ask about, in iterating on this piece and, creating it, performing it in so many places and now watching it, how did your creative journey align with your, reflections on body positivity and especially motherhood? Like, how did all of these journeys intersect?
Oh my God. I mean, it's so meta, but it's like, it was a gestational period, like me evolving as an artist. Like, I was a little baby fetus, and then like I was born a baby, and then now I can like walk as an artist, like producing 140 pounds. Like, I did not know how to work with a crew and a stage manager. I didn't know what blocking was. Like, I didn't know how to set up shows. And by the time I'm at over 140 pounds, it's like, I felt like I was on it. Like, I knew how to run the team a little bit more. Like, I felt very comfortable with vernacular and all this stuff. So like, I just felt like I could see myself evolve as an artist. And the same exact thing without how I feel about my mother and my body. It's like, I also saw that evolve too, where I came to a place that I felt much more confident. I mean, I think though, it's like when you're pregnant, like, you can't tell if you're too pregnant, right? Actually, well, in the show, I did get a comment that I was too pregnant. But overall, when I'm pregnant, it's like, there's no like too much. Like, it's just like, yay, I'm pregnant. And there was like just one emotion with it. Now that I'm not pregnant anymore, it's like, I'm starting to feel down about my body. You know what I mean? So like, I see it as a cycle. The other day I was on a run and I see this like beautiful magnolia tree. And when I had run by it about a month ago, it was like still like closed up. And then at one point it had totally blossomed. And now like half the petals are on the floor, on the ground. And I'm sitting there going like, why am I attached to any one part of the cycle when I know the cycle is going to repeat again? Like, it's like almost like I don't need to wish we were in another part of that blooming cycle with the magnolia. I should be like, where we are is where we are. And that goes back to like that acceptance piece. And so I guess I just wanted to be totally transparent that it's like, I do this work, I talk about it, but like right now I feel insecure about my body. So it's like, it kind of like comes around and my body relationship changes over time. And I think that when I'm more in touch with my spiritual self, when I'm doing all the things that are good for me, which is like, I don't know why I'm doing quotes. It's actually truly good for me. Like meditation, affirmations, talking to my mom, prayer, visualization, like doing things where I am being very intentional about the reality I want instead of like waking up, checking out Instagram, reading through all my mail and like kind of getting out of bed. Like already my mind has been just dictated by somebody else. And so it's like I just need to come back to my center, come back to my center. And I think as an artist, it's like right now I'm switching to a new medium. Like I'm about to be a book author. Like I'm writing a memoir. It'll come out in 2 years by Macmillan. Like, oh my God. And because it's a new medium, I'm frightened. I am scared. I'm insecure. I'm like flailing all over the place. Hopefully my agent isn't on this show right now. But like I'm scared. But like that magnolia tree, isn't it all just this cycle? You know, and as Elizabeth said, it's like, okay, we're still gonna have the noise. Where is the kindness? How do we lead with that to ourselves so that we're perpetuating a reality that actually serves us? So that's kind of where I mean, this is my very long answer to your question, which is like, I'm always in a cycle. And it's like, where am I in that cycle? Where am I literally on my moon cycle and how I feel and like where my feelings and hormones are? And how do I get to this place of centeredness?
Right. And it's a practice and you're so clear, like when I am in my practice, I tend to have a better attitude and approach. And so it's just about practicing over and over and over and making a choice to turn towards what's beautiful about the leaves on the ground. And if you can get this piece about your relationship with your body now around pregnancy and post-pregnancy, it'll come in real handy when it all falls apart as you grow old. You know, it really is a useful thing to come in relation to like, how can I see my body as art or nature rather than a magazine cover for marketing that's perfectly symmetrical and matches the Aryan standard of beauty, right?
Correct.
But instead, like as a changing, modeled, full of pain and suffering and beauty and joy, and then you can grow really old. And it's really, really precious to have that, just all the attributes you just talked about of seeing things as a cycle, recognizing that it's not about perfecting or arriving, it's about a process, and really radically embracing the impermanence of things.
Yeah. I really resonate with the cycle aspect. And another quote that has been really supportive for me that's similar is that life is meant to have problems. Like you're never going to be at a point in life where you're, scot-free, like no problems are ever coming your way. And I think that again is a form of resistance to like this idea of like perfectionism, of feeling like, oh, you need to have been succeeded or achieved something by a particular age or by a particular time. Because I know that for me, I can feel caught up of like, oh shoot, like now that I'm older, I should have already figured out all of these things. Like I should not feel insecure about my body. I should know what my career is going to look like, right? And so reminding myself that life is meant to have problems and that the cycles are not a bad thing. They're actually very beautiful, like that magnolia tree you were able to witness, Susan. I'm going to keep remembering that as I move forward.
You just reminded me of, I used to go to these personal growth workshops growing up, or like high school onwards. And I remember someone was like, are you shooting on yourself? And I was like, am I shooting on myself? And what I heard you say, you said the word should like 5 times, right? Like, should I do this? Should I do this? And it's like, God, who's profiting off the should? Right, Sophia? Like, who's profiting off the should? Okay, so we are nearing the end of our program, and I have learned so many juicy tidbits. Basically, I'm going to be way kinder to myself and practice and ask these very amazing questions that are non-threatening to people. I'm going to do that. I want to know how to stay in touch with each of you on what you are up to. How can people continue to be engaged? Elizabeth, you talked about workshops for high schooler students. What about us?
You can take our trainings. They're all online now. So just the Body Positive Fundamentals, it's a 4-hour course. You'll come out with so many great questions to inquire with all of your friends and family. And you'll learn the model, which is what are the dimensions of experience that help us be more free in how we relate to our body. And many of the things you've presented tonight and that you've talked about show up in our training. And we learned what these dimensions are just by listening to young people for years and years and years. What makes you resilient against hating your body? What practices help you stay in the positive attitude about all the changes that are happening in your body? How can you stay connected to community of people who are willing to inquire this deeply? Things like that. So thebodypositive.org, just go there and jump on the fundamentals, or go all the way and take a facilitator training and start teaching the curriculum where you're asking questions, and you have a whole beautiful curriculum you can teach.
Wow.
It's a really huge resource.
I'm so excited to check this out. That sounds
I'm like, that's good. When you can be a teacher, you're the true learner. How about y'all, Down, Sophia? What's going on with your podcast, or should we subscribe, or what are you talking about now on your podcast?
Yeah, so maybe I can share a little bit about some upcoming episodes that we have, and then Sophia can share more details about like where you can find us. So I would say that, so we're actually releasing an episode tomorrow, and we are chatting about how Sophia and I both grew up in the Bay, and we had been really reflecting on our relationship with that part of our life. And we decided to go ahead and reconnect with like an old friend. And so tomorrow is Sophia's episode where she's reconnecting with an old high school friend. And so it's going to be really exciting. I'm going to be getting to listen to it for the first time as well. And then an episode after that is with a dear friend of mine who has known from a very young age that she is taking up the responsibility of being a caregiver for her older disabled brother. And so what are the expectations that had been placed upon her as an Asian woman, as well as being the eventual caretaker for her brother? It was a very vulnerable conversation, and something that I think a lot of people in the audience might enjoy. So those are two of our upcoming episodes that are coming out.
Yeah, and for the one with Catching Up with Michelle, we reflect on brave decisions. So we have actually not talked to each other for about like 10 years now. And so I reflect on, as I'm looking at your life and your social media, what do I feel like with the brave decisions you made that I could have never made? And she shares in return. And we're just like hearing this in real time together. Yes, so I'm very excited to share that episode. And if you're interested in these stories, you can find us on Instagram at Bamboo and Glass. We'll share episode highlights and also reflection questions. And you can find us on every podcasting platform as well. So wherever you listen, you can find Bamboo and Glass. And Tan kindly left all the links.
So wait. That question was, what was a brave decision you did not make?
Oh, we talk about, so I said, based on
that question and like, say it at happy hour mixers, like when everything goes.
Yes, do it.
Is that the question? Is that the precise question?
Yes, it was. Well, we asked several variations of it. So it's like, what is a decision? What are some brave decisions you are proud of making?
Okay.
What is a brave decision? What is a decision that you did not have the bravery to make?
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, with that, we are at the end of our time. I just wanted to say thank you to Susan, Elizabeth, Daun, Sophia. Thank you for such a kind and thoughtful and helpful discussion. I was processing a lot, and I'm sure all of our guests were too. And I also really wanted to thank all of our attendees today who joined us for the screening, but also who stayed after to join in on our post-show conversation. And we hope you got a lot from it, as much as I did. And I hope you guys stay in touch with all of our great speakers, as well as OACC. Visit us at oacc.cc to attend other upcoming events for Asian Pacific Heritage Month. We have a lot of great virtual programs, and really look forward to seeing you all online again. So thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great evening, and happy Mother's Day to all mothers and grandmothers out there. And I hope you are enjoying tomorrow with all of your loved ones. So thank you again.
We have two more shows.
Oh, yes, and exactly. Susan is right. We have two more shows. They are tomorrow at 2 and at 4 p.m. So please check out our website, buy more tickets. If you enjoyed today's show and know someone who will also benefit from it, so please, we hope to see you again. So thank you everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.